Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artists Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the In Focus podcast, brought to you by the Artists Index and graciously sponsored by the great folks at Heavenly Spirits Imports. And this is going to make our 115th podcast, which I keep saying it's a milestone. Every one of these is a milestone. And today we have an individual who is involved in the art market, the creative community, but not as an artist, but as a manager, as an art industry professional, or an artist adjacent, perhaps, if you want to call her that. So with that in mind, I'm going to allow her to introduce herself and spell her name, and we'll take it from there.
Hi, I'm Leanne Camara, and my first name is actually spelled strangely, so I appreciate the opportunity to spell it for people. It's pronounced Leanne, but it's spelled Lean, and my last name Camara is Camara. And just a quick story about why my first name is spelled strangely is the short story really is that my parents misspelled it. They are not native English speakers. They immigrated from Portugal, and they heard the name Leanne and spelled it the way it sounded to them, not realizing that an English speaker reader would read it as lean. So that's the short story behind it.
I can understand that. My mother, although she was born here, the family did go back to Portugal during the Depression. And although I ended up with a French-Canadian first name to match my French-Canadian surname, whenever I'm in trouble or whatever, my mother puts the O on, the Portuguese O, so it's Ronaldo. And I already know I'm in trouble. So she's 95, and God bless her. She still terrorizes me.
Good for her.
Very quickly, do you have family on the island of St. George?
San Miguel is actually where both my parents are from. Okay. My father still has family there. All of my mother's family is there. She has two brothers there. Right. Her parents are no longer alive. My grandparents are no longer alive, but my mother still has land there and a house there. And my three daughters and my husband and I will be going this summer, actually in August. We haven't been in 4 years, I believe. So we go, every few years or so.
Yeah, that's too long. That's way too long. The reason why I was asking is because I think it's unprecedented that they have this much warning that St. George is the seismic readings, the tremors are getting worse and worse and worse. Yeah, and obviously they've had horrible situations. Fayal being the worst, probably, right. Which brought a wave of people from Fayal to the city. Horrible stories that I've heard about that. So. Leanne, give us a little bit about your background and up to where you are now, and what where you are now means or will mean to the creative community.
So where I am now is I recently started at the New Bedford Light, which is a local nonprofit community-based digital newspaper, but in digital format only. And I am a director there of strategic projects. And as part of my new role, I am helping launch the New Bedford Fine Arts Club, which Ron, you had a big part in bringing here from modeling it after the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club. And so I'm sort of the project manager behind it. When you asked me to be on this, put my name in the Artist Index and be on the podcast, I did tell you that I feel a little bit like Dolly Parton when she got invited or, was named to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And she was like, I don't deserve it. And That's exactly how I felt. Like, oh no, I have to prove myself in the future now, now that I've been
Well,
assigned this.
there are a lot of people that keep this community going on various
Mhm.
levels, directors, curators, gallerists, lumped together as industry professionals. A couple of podcasts ago, we had Peter Andrade, who's the property manager for the Kilburn Mill. He's been
Mhm.
there for well over 3 decades.
Mhm.
The last few years with the mill being bought by a group, development group, and turned into artist studios, amongst other things. So now that brings our artist occupancy or studio units up in the city. We have the Hatch Street, the Rope
Mhm.
Works. There might be one or two other smaller places, but now we have the Kilburn Mill in the south end of the city, which is a peninsula, and always feeling like they're on the tip of God's finger. They're not connected to the rest of the city, but this is a fabulous opportunity.
Mhm.
What is it about, and you've attended a couple of the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club meetings. My wife is from Detroit. I don't remember how I tripped over the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club, but the pandemic, it was a gift of the pandemic. They used to meet at Noni's Sheridan Grill in Detroit proper. They would pack that restaurant on a Monday night with 120 something people. And the intensity, they said you could cut the air with a knife. It was that intense, with excitement, where you have young artists walking around almost like what do they call them? The rounds girls, the women who hold up what round it is in the wrestling match or the boxing match, whatever. And they each have 2 minutes per piece. They have 2 pieces per person, per artist, to show people. And a lot of these are young people who are just fresh, into the art scene. And in a lot of cases, there are some artists who are fresh into this art scene, the Detroit art scene, who are in their 70s. It's not people who returned to art that they had to drop off because of children and so on and so forth. It's people who always wondered, gee, I wonder if I could, and they have, and they did. So the pandemic threw a wrench into their plans, and they went on Zoom meetings. And you witnessed a couple of the Zoom meetings, and please tell us what you thought about it and how it's the New Bedford Light Breakfast Club and why they dropped the word breakfast. The New Bedford Light Fine Arts Club is being modeled after that.
Yeah, so when I started at the New Bedford Light, this project was already in discussion, doing it here in New Bedford. I participated in a few of the meetings. As you just noted, had participated in the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club meetings as a result of them being virtual now. And it was really hard to, I understood the concept, but it was really hard to fully, grasp what it was like. So, I participated in 2 of the Detroit meetings, and I was just like, oh, wow, this is, there was just, it was just such a special place, and place may not be the right word because it's all virtual, but just the sense of, celebration around people's progress, their art, the quality of the art. I mean, I know that many of these people do not necessarily identify as their first profession as artists, but just the discussion about the art, the question and answer periods related to the art. It was just quite special. It helped really give me a sense of what it was, even though the New Bedford Light was already started on that process, but of planning this, with your and Kat's help. But it was just, it suddenly became, exciting once I was able to see it. What the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club does is really quite special. They give a platform to the artists. And there's just learning going on. I remember you giving a comment to somebody who presented a piece of artwork, and you were noting his progress within just a 3-month period, and just I mean, just being able for him to be able to have that support and that feedback was just probably, wonderful. So it's exciting to bring something similar to that here to New Bedford.
Yeah, it's funny, for the longest time, I kept saying, before I discovered the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club, that what we needed around here were the salon, because you don't get to use that word very much, but the salon. And a salon was basically just a bunch of artists all together at tables, drinking coffee, whatever, spirituous beverages, and showing their work. And that's very much what the Breakfast Club was all about. And it's really, really needed, because I remember stories of people telling me that they they got a studio, for example, at Hatch Street, because they felt so isolated working in either a shed, a spare bedroom in their basement, their attic space, wherever. They felt so isolated from other artists. So they went and got themselves a studio at Hatch Street. And then they realized they were just as isolated, because all the artists were all concentrating on their work and nobody comes out and mixes it up. There's only the open studio tours and so on and so forth. So that interaction is really, really important. And, the blessings bestowed upon Henry Hopper and Harold Braggs, two friends. One is a collector. That's Mr. Braggs. He and his wife are large art collectors. And Henry Hopper, who runs the Hopper Galleries of Art and Antiques, is an antiquarian unsurpassed. He has dealt with the Ford family. He's gone through their collections in their homes and their mansions. He took me on a grand tour of it. His passion is 18th century American-made furniture. I know he's planning a trip to coming out to New Bedford, and he's going to be buying some furniture. But the wonderfulness about him is his mentoring of not just the young artists, but everybody there. Because one of the first comments, and you've heard him when you put up an image up on the screen, is it signed?
Every single time.
Every single time. Because he says, I'm in a secondary market, and I get these pieces of artwork to appraise or assess. And it's like, I have the faintest idea. There's no signature front, back, or anywhere else. So I tried to get away with it for quite a while. Like, my abstract work, I've signed it on the back. He's like, well, you can't necessarily go, and lift up the painting and look on the back. They don't like that. So that's just one of the things. And I think you were there for one of the meetings when they were talking about prints, making prints.
Yes, it was very educational.
And intense, wasn't it?
It was quite intense, yes. But yeah, very educational. I mean, I know almost nothing about art. So, that was a discussion very much focused on the business side and just all the layers and sophistication to it, which, I hadn't really been exposed to before.
Yeah. So that's basically, and you mentioned Kat. Some people like Kat, who, Kat what? Kat Knutson, who is an artist here in New Bedford. She is probably best known, if you know her at all, for her participation in Loving Vincent. She was one of the incredible staff of production artists that worked on the movie Loving Vincent. So we had this conversation, I think just probably in the middle of the pandemic, wherever the middle is now. and we talked to DOCO, the dough company in the Kilburn Mill. And we had the beginnings of a possibility of doing a live meeting. DOCO is very much for it. They're going to have a specialized menu. Then, as working artists, we've got several irons in the fire. And somehow it came up to Bobby Rosner from the founding editor of the New Bedford Light. And she said, I love this concept. And here you are. It's happened that quickly. As a representative of the New Bedford Light, what are some of your visions, hopes, goals for the New Bedford Light Fine Arts Club?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I would love for it to, I mean, we're going to follow our own path, obviously, but we have big shoes to fill in the sense of, modeling it after the Detroit program. I mean, just for them to be able to have that interest, for there to be, when it was in person, for it to be such a thing that people had to line up in advance. I mean, that would be, that's what we aspire to. For it to be kind of a known entity, or entity probably isn't the right word, but just a known place for artists to connect and for people to appreciate art for both its artistic aspects and also just the kind of community connection aspect. Yeah, that would be great. I mean, we're starting, as we're starting off virtually, because when we first started planning, we didn't know where things were going to be with the pandemic. It's sort of hard to plan in advance right now, as everybody understands. But yeah, I would love, I appreciate where we're starting. I'm happy about where we're starting virtually. That makes sense. But it'll be a fun corner to turn when we actually get to in person, and to, I'd love for it to have the community-wide support that the Detroit Fine Arts Club has. That would be great for the artists.
I think that James Dozier, or as he just prefers to be referred to as Dozier, who was another major collector in Detroit. He's become sort of like the third leg in the stool with Harold Braggs as another collector, and then Henry Hopper. Henry and Harold just very quickly would meet at a place for breakfast, and they would just be talking about their passions: collecting art, finding art, selling art. And another gentleman joined them, and another person, and another person, and another person. And before you know it, they had what was the genesis of the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club. It was done at breakfast time. The proprietor of the place said, "No, I can't have you guys in here like tying up this place. It's just too much." So they said, "Oh, okay." So they left, and they were looking for another venue. And then the owner of Noni's calls them up and says, "You know what? I've had a change of heart. Monday night is like my slow night. So how about you guys gather?" And the rule of thumb was everybody that's in that place has to buy something, because obviously that's his livelihood. Right. And James Dozier told me that when his first night, when he found out about it, and he went to go visit, he said, actually it took him, I think, 2-3 weeks to get into the Breakfast Club, because he said he kept circling the block and it was so many cars, he couldn't get in there. He says, and he said, it didn't deter me. It actually incentivized me. He said, there's got to be something really good going on in there. In, I think the last number that Henry gave me was in 9 years' time, and he's only kept track, not for any other purpose. He would just ask the artist, how much did you sell that piece for? Just kept tabs for nobody else's business. $4 million of sales. And like he said, with a sale being as little as $50 to he remembers 1 or 2 sales being $3,000-$4,000.
Wow.
From the more established artists and so on and so forth. The mentoring, the camaraderie, the community, is absolutely fantastic. They are watching what New Bedford Light is. They're very curious, because we're almost like two sides of the same coin. We're going from virtual and eventually want to transition to live. They've gone from live to virtual, but now they're like, they can't leave the Zoom, the virtual alone. And it's gotten a little loose compared to what it used to be. Explain to folks what the agenda is of a breakfast. I'm sorry, I'm so used to saying that, of a fine arts club meeting.
So it's really about showcasing the artist's work. So it's, a pretty simple introduction, and then going right into highlighting the artist's work. We're selecting to start 10 artists, each time we have a meeting, who get to present at least 2 pieces, or no more than 2 pieces. I'm sorry, no more than 2 pieces. And they have 5 minutes to introduce their pieces, take any questions, and, give some quick answers. That happens for all 10 artists that are selected. And then afterwards, there's an opportunity. And so during that exchange, people, will know if they want to buy something, and then the transaction is going to happen between the interested party and the artist, outside of the actual virtual meeting. But we'll have contact information available so that people who are attending know how to contact the artist and make the purchase happen. So after the 10 artists show their pieces, talk about their pieces, we'll then move into kind of a loose format of what we're calling afterglow and wrap up, where people can highlight any, art openings or art gallery presentations that they have going on. And there can be additional questions about either the artists or the artist's works that were just seen by the 10 presenting artists. So, and then, so it'll be about an hour and a half. We think that's a good amount of time for a virtual event. And then, we'll play around with it once we move to in person, and, it'll just give us more flexibility in person to be able to do different things. But for a virtual event, we're keeping it to about an hour and a half to start.
Yeah, the virtual aspect of it has its pluses. It also has its minuses. Work is much easier to see. Now, the work is going to be submitted by the artist on some sort of an online platform, like a form or whatever, because that's going to cut down the coordination time for each meeting, correct? So if you've already submitted, go ahead.
Yeah, so interested artists will submit their work, complete a very simple form. There's 8 basic questions, so that during the virtual meeting, somebody on the New Bedford Light staff who is really proficient at using, webinar and Zoom formats will, when it's each artist's turn, present the image on the screen so that everybody can see it. So that way we don't have issues with people who aren't very familiar with Zoom and don't know how to share their screen, just so we can have a smooth production.
Even with a sharing aspect, even with people who are familiar, it's always that if you have 2 pieces to show, unless you've already got them set up like in a PowerPoint or in another platform, it's like you have to share, unshare, and share again, because you won't be able to see the second image. And so this cuts down on a lot of that, of that lost time and awkwardness, actually, right?
Yeah.
So I refer to this first section as the show and sell, and that is really what it's all about. The work that you present you have to be ready with a price. One of the simplest ways of contacting the artist, the chat feature is wonderful, because say it's just, Leanne Camara there, you're the presenting artist. And I said, oh, I like that. I just find your name in the chat, click on it. Nobody knows I've contacted you. But you can go to everybody and say, I sold this piece, do a chat to everybody. Or as you see the chat coming in and the person says sold, then you can say just sold it, thank you very much, and you move on to the next artist. So I think that'll cause a bit of a feeding frenzy, hopefully. And also it creates another channel, another avenue for artists of all levels in their career to sell. Now, Kat and I had this kind of a paradoxical thing about collectors. How do you get to collectors here? After speaking with several of the gentlemen in Detroit, they basically said, you don't find the collectors will find you. So the word will spread. That this
do you think that will happen?
Place.
Do you think that will happen in a place like New I just don't know. I don't know much about the New Bedford art world or any art world, but if there's that type of structure, like the word of mouth will still happen here, I guess.
Exactly. And I've spoken to several acquaintances in the industry, in the art industry, because it is an industry. And they said they don't, one friend, she said, they don't wear t-shirts that says, hey, I'm a collector, right? They prefer not to, expose themselves for lots of reasons. But the word will get out. That this is a great place to, number one, find rising talent. And it also is about, the collectors collect for various reasons. One of them is financial. It is almost like the stock market. You know, they bought a John Smith when he was selling for under $500, and now that particular John Smith is now worth $5,000. Does this happen to everybody? No, but part of the selling isn't just to pay bills. Part of the selling is it's not justification. It's it pretty much. I just totally lost that word.
It'll come back to you probably as soon as we hang up, of course.
Exactly, or in the middle of the evening. But
Yeah.
and my wife uses it so much as well. But you know, you're being recognized. You're being you know, the sale is, it's just not like, oh, that's beautiful. Oh wow, that's great. Or it's like ka-ching, there you go. You know, you have value.
Right.
And with the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club, there have been at least 5 artists in that organization who have gone international as a result of that group. Jonathan Harris, who did the critical race theory painting for show in a really great little gallery, had no idea what was going to happen to his life. The buyer bought it and never, she just revealed herself this week after months.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think this whole thing started probably in November, because I remember, I think I bought one of his prints before we left to go visit family for Christmas. And I believe in just one post, there was something like 30,000 shares, some crazy number like that. Will it happen here? Only time will tell.
Yeah, you can't predict those things.
Yeah.
You
Now,
can't predict those things.
the New Bedford Light is a digital newspaper. It's all about content. How do you see the Fine Arts Club producing content?
Well, the meeting itself, and then we also hope to have, you know, a digital gallery for at least at first for the artists that are participating in the Fine Arts Club. And then, you know, perhaps expanding that to, you know, include others as well. But I know those are the first initial ideas. And by digital gallery, you know, we would ensure, as a media organization and with people on staff who know much more about the technology aspect, you know, we're well positioned to be able to promote the event effectively. So hopefully that word of mouth will happen, you know, the spreading of the message will happen more quickly. And also it allows us to make sure that we're doing the digital gallery right, so that it really allows the artist's work to be presented in, you know, the best possible light. So, you know, those are the 2, you know, initial ways that I'd say that this, you know, helps with content production.
Okay. Now, where do you come from professionally? You know, your degrees and so on and so forth.
Yep. So I've actually spent most of my professional life working in the nonprofit world. My master's is in social work. My undergraduate degree is in journalism, so I do have a little bit of a connection to a journalistic enterprise or entity. And I went to Ithaca College for my undergraduate degree. I actually wanted to be a sports broadcaster, of all things. Yes, people find that very surprising nowadays, because I did not take that path at all. And it was when I was in undergraduate school that I was in a class, you know, writing my articles, doing my work, and a teacher asked me to stay after. And I thought, oh, what's this about? She wants me to stay after class. I wonder why. And the whole point of her holding me after class was to tell me, Leanne, I hear you want to be a sports broadcaster, but all the works that you're submitting in class are about like social justice issues. Like, what are you doing? Why do you want to be a sports broadcaster? And I looked at her, I was like, you know what, you're right. You're absolutely right. And it was just like, I didn't have a good reason. I mean, I was athletic in high school. I liked sports. I really liked kind of the barrier breaking nature of, you know, there's still, you know, it's definitely a field that's still predominantly men. 20 years ago when I was in high school, you know, it was even more so about, you know, men and very few women in the field. So for me, I guess I was attracted to it because I was athletic and I liked sports and I wanted to, you know, break some type of barrier. then I got to college, and this professor helped me realize that it's not what I was doing. And so I decided to make a big career pivot. And after undergrad, I went straight to graduate school for my master's degree in social work. Yeah, it's hard to explain what my 20-year-old self was thinking, but that's the best story I have. Who knows? You figure yourself out as life comes.
Are you still a big sports fan?
I'm not. I barely watch anything. I mean, I'm still interested in it. I guess it's more of a time issue. If I had a lot of time, I would still watch a lot of sports. My husband's a really big sports fan, so I feel like he carries that burden for the family, and I don't. But yeah, I mean, when I was in high school, I mean, I would study statistics, sports statistics. So yeah, I was, but I just didn't keep it up. I don't know.
That's interesting. I mean, my wife is a sports fan in the family. I could care less. My father was never into sports. My mother, obviously. So I didn't grow up around that kind of thing. Being a little myopic as a child didn't endear me to sports, because I would never see the ball that was about to crash into my face until it was just a couple of inches away. But my wife, obviously growing up in a big sports town, the Pistons, the Tigers, the Lions, the Red Wings. So that's really interesting. And I just remembered the word validation.
Okay.
It's validation. I mean, there's nothing more that's going to validate you as an artist than to have a sale. And that's another thing too. The entire Fine Arts Club really is, if you had to boil it down to an elevator speech, as to it's show and sell. So you're showing your work, which is exposing you or bringing you to the forefront as an artist. Your work sells. That validates you. And then there's this, now we have a pathway, which before we didn't. From a sociologist's point of view, how do you see the creative community?
That's a great question. I mean, well, as I mentioned earlier, like, I don't know a whole lot about art. I have some local art. I have some of Allison's work. My husband got it for me for Christmas one year. But
that's Allison Wells.
Yes, Allison Wells. Yep, with her downtown New Bedford studio. I think what art does for the world, what artists do for the world, is they in the best of times, or ideally they reflect what's happening in the world. They also facilitate change. They help highlight issues. So I think it's sort of, I relate it to, I would like to read a lot. And, it's the same thing that writers do, artists are doing as well. It's just in a different format. But yeah, that's the best answer I have.
No, it's
a deep question.
It is. I mean, there's myth and matter. The myth is all the fluff. The matter is the part that people don't really. I mean, it is still a business. People do spend hours on learning their profession. They say, oh, well, who does that lawyer think he is, getting $100 an hour? Well, it's a real simple answer. The amount of debt that they had to go into to get that law degree is one thing. So they had to pay for that. And there's a lot of other things that are involved as well. Yeah, it's what the market will bear. You can only represent X amount of clients well. So that keeps others away. And with the art community, it's the same thing. I mean, you spent a lot of time learning. It's a lifetime of learning. You spent a lot of time being trained. You paid for that. Each piece of work requires an investment in materials and time. And then there is this thing that there are people out there who just need to be surrounded by art. They just need art, want art. I know I've met a lot of buyers who say, I don't know a darn thing about art, but when I do see something I like, I
Right.
want it.
Right. Yeah. And
So-
I will say that my husband's maternal grandmother, she's in her 90s now, but she made money her whole life by being an artist.
Oh, really?
That was the only profession she had. Yeah. And in the room I'm in, we actually don't have any of her artwork, but we do have it throughout the house.
Right.
And my husband's from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and she used to paint very kind of like traditional, like Amish Lancaster County paintings. She was a painter. And her house, or I don't know if it's still if her artwork is still in the White House, but I believe it was the first Bush. And he had some of her work in the White House.
Right.
I don't know if it's still there.
Is it the folky kind of art, or is it the more the landscape schools that she represented?
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of children, a lot of schools in it. Yeah, buildings, like old mills and that type of thing. Very, very detailed work. Very, very detailed work.
What's her name? If you, okay.
Dolores Hackenberger, and I'm just. Yeah, we don't have any in this room that I'm in. I'm surprised. This is my kid's office, so it's quite busy. So there might be a painting in here. It's just covered with their stuff. So
Yeah. It's got to be. Yeah. That's great. I mean, have you spoken with her at all about this?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. She, she painted up until very recently, actually, and for my children's. One of my children, when they were in preschool, for like a gift for their teachers, we actually had my husband's grandmother paint a picture of the preschool with kids on the playground. And so she painted that, and that was our gift to the teachers for Christmas one year. But yeah, no, she doesn't do it anymore, just because of her age, but she did it. Her husband died when her children, she had, just barely adult children, but then he died pretty early in life. And she had to find a way to make money. And she'd always been an artist, but hadn't really made a solid chance at selling. And so then that's what she did to, pay her bills.
Right. Wow. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Can you reveal when the first New Bedford Light Fine Arts Club will come out? Oh, and we got to explain why it's just fine art, what fine arts is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what, you probably give a better explanation than I can, but I did even look up the word fine arts in the dictionary. I think it was the Oxford dictionary I looked at. And yeah, the emphasis sort of, Lake Detroit is on fine arts. But you always use the term, Ron, emerging and established artists. I think that's what you always use. I think that's a great way to describe it. We're not trying to exclude people who are not, who don't feel like they're at the height of their, artistic journey, but it is focused on fine art. So, really excluding things like arts and crafts projects is really, just trying, that's the differentiation we're trying to make, I think. What do you have a better way to describe it, Ron? You probably have thought more about that.
Well, it's, more in keeping with the traditional, painting, drawing, sculpting, printmaking, and, even fiber arts are included in there as well. I don't think I've left anything else out, but it does fall under the umbrella of fine arts. And the other thing is that you don't have to be schooled or trained, because there's another trend that's appearing. For the longest time, we had people who didn't have any formal education in the arts and always felt a little shy about it. Don't care. Now there's a thing where, wow, you didn't go to art school? Wow. So, it's weird. I mean, society just flip-flops all over the place. So basically it's anybody who is doing work that they're hoping to rise to the next level. I mean, they're probably, it's more than a hobby. It's more than a hobby. That's basically what it's all about. And there's nothing wrong that it may be currently a hobby, but you want to bring it up to the next step and level. Well, this is one way to get your feet wet, to test the the marketplace to see, how people are going to react to your work. Do we guarantee that every single piece is going to be sold? No, absolutely not. There's going to be, you're going to really have to think about what you're pricing your work at. One of the biggest problems that I've witnessed personally with the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club is that either the work is priced too low, like ridiculously low. Oh, 25, 35, 50, 75. No. And I've actually seen collectors go, no, let's throw 100 on top of that. Okay. To what, are you nuts?
Right.
Who are you? Who are you to be asking $5,000? We don't even know who you are. So there's another thing that's, you have to take your licks. You have to take you have to put in your time and become a known. You have to become a known entity. Nobody wants to buy something from someone who's not known. It's just the first, the last, and the only piece you'll ever make, for example. So that's incredibly important.
It's it gives people, like a safe environment to learn and explore and figure out their way. And
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I did pull up because I wanted to get the date right. The first New Bedford Fine Arts Club meeting will be Wednesday, April 20th at 7:00. And the New Bedford Light will be promoting soon in the next few days the information for how people to register, people who want to just attend and people who want to present something. And the plan is to do it the third Wednesday of every month. And then hopefully when we transition to in-person, and if it's really popular, we can look at doing it more than once a month, but that's where we're starting.
Right. Good. That sounds great. Anything else do you think that we should cover that we didn't?
I don't think so. No, thank you for this opportunity. And
you're welcome. Welcome to the creative community. I don't know what made me the doorman, but
but you are. Yeah. I don't think any other time in my life have I ever been able to say, I feel like this must be how Dolly Parton feels. So at least you gave me an opportunity to feel unworthy, but know that I still have to prove myself. So
yeah, I think it's there are people in the community who need to keep the gears rolling. I was going to say keep them greased. Yeah, it's keep everything moving smoothly, and this is just part and parcel of it. One of the biggest missing elements has been, and I've said this countless times, is we don't have, and I know some people just push back on that, a commercial gallery, a standalone commercial gallery. And what a commercial gallery is a gallery that's all they do. It's not an artist studio. It's not a hybrid of any sort. It's not even operated by an artist. It's a gallery where someone believes that they can partner with local artists to sell work on their behalf and make a good living doing it. So it's a good living for both. It's almost like a bad joke about similar to the wine business. How do you make a small fortune in the gallery business? Well, the answer in the wine business, how do you make a small fortune in the wine business, is you start off with a large one. So, it's a risk. There's a huge risk there.
Right.
And what's beautiful about this is there's no risk. The middleman, quote unquote, is the New Bedford Light. And we just don't know where this is going to go from here.
Yeah, maybe in a few years, we'll look back and go, remember that first time we did that interview and we just thought this was going to be something that it didn't, and we didn't realize all the full potential, but it does have a lot of potential. So I look forward to seeing where it goes.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ron.
Hey, I can't wait. And I know the folks in Detroit are going to be glued to their screens as well. Well, folks, that wraps up another episode of the In Focus podcast, brought to you by the Artist Index and graciously supported by the fine folks at Heavenly Spirits Imports. And until next time, be good, be kind, be happy. See you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Be the artist you believe you are, and let's take care of each other out